crystia.
Oh, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Fringe. What a weekend it was in Alberta politics, especially with Naheed Nenshi, as I call him, rallying amongst all the other leaders of the NDP, or the potential leaders, I should say, of the NDP that are essentially lobbying for your vote. They're lobbying for anyone's vote in order to take the Sheriff of Nottingham's position when she steps down officially from leader of the NDP. Now, I have voiced my concerns multiple times as to why I think Calgary in particular is in deep trouble when it comes to Gen Z. Yes, I slipped up on a video last week accidentally saying Gen X. Gen Z. I'm part of Gen X. I'm not part of those entitled I guess miscreants that don't want to get dirty or work or, understand how society functions. But Gen Z, as well as a lot of the boomer generation, tend to still support Naheed Nenshi in Calgary. I don't know if that's going to change after this weekend because shocking revelations have come on a racist tirade of Naheed Nenshi. Now, any other politician who talks like the way I'm about to show you with Naheed Nenshi speaks would ultimately destroy their career. Their career would be over. They wouldn't be moving forward. In fact, they'd probably step down and allow somebody else to take their position. But Naheed Nenshi standing up in a convention this weekend, more like a debate, I should say, with the other leaders, refers to Albertans as monkeys. That's right. Now, me as a white person, if I called somebody else a monkey, that would be considered racist by any regards. Now, Naheed Nenshi is very racist. We know that. I'm going to show a clip on that. This is how the NDP feels about Albertans. Monkeys, said Naheed Nenshi at the Alberta NDP leadership frontrunner debate on May 11th. They're embarrassing cousins, said Rachel Notley on September 15th, 2015. Sewer rats, said Sarah Hoffman, who's also running for the Alberta NDP MLA or replacement for Notley. But she said this in 2017. We even have entitled grabby resource exploiters. Kevin Teagham, former Alberta NDP star candidate. Rednecks, Brian Mason, former Alberta NDP leader. This is how we are viewed. Now, I've said a million times over, people need to come to grips with the term or the reality that we need oil and gas. It's a part of our lives. Just as provinces like Manitoba focus on agriculture and wheat production, that's their main export. That is their main claim to fame. They're wheat farmers. They are agriculture. Saskatchewan is a mix of agriculture and oil and gas. Alberta, mainly oil and gas. The list goes on between provinces as to what their major export is. Whether you want to buy an electric car, whether you want to cut down on plastic straws, whether you want to use reusable bags, whether you sit on Stephen Guilbeault's wacky constitution, that's okay. That's your choice. But what we need to come to grips with is that oil and gas is necessary until we find a better solution, until a better solution is put in practice, a more affordable, renewable solution. I'm happy to invest in all kinds of technologies. But to come out and say these things and then expect people to vote you in as a leader, this is not the way a leader talks about other people. I've often said that it doesn't matter what party you represent. My opinions of parties have changed throughout decades, throughout the 2 decades roughly that I've been allowed to vote legally. My opinions have gone from the left to the right to center to off the scale when it comes to how each individual proposes to better my livelihood. Name calling and labeling is not a way to do it. That's not how you do it. Danielle Smith has never used any of these words. And people would say, well, he just said monkeys, like it's crazy. It's like a zoo. Well, is it? Because Naheed Nenshi also sat down with some racial remarks during lockdowns when he was mayor of Calgary. Let's take a listen to that.
By the way,
those people at those anti-mask protests, let's not kid ourselves. They're not people who need to eat. They are people who are marching in thinly veiled white nationalist, supremacist, anti-government protests, and they don't deserve that kind of sympathy.
They don't need to eat. They don't deserve sympathy. White nationalists. I think if anybody could skip a meal, it's this guy. But what's surprising about that statement, I'm going to rewind that statement, because what's really surprising about that is what we see over here at the convention to which he was speaking. Now, he does this glorious little package of music and inspirational speech, but let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Sometimes as progressives, we fall into the trap of offering up purity tests or asking people to say certain magic words before they can join our club. Instead of saying that we have to be judged on our values.
Wait a minute, purity tests to join the club? And they want to be judged by values? How about...
By the way, those people at those anti-mask protests, let's not kid ourselves. They're not people who need to eat. They are people who are marching in thinly veiled white nationalist, supremacist, anti-government protests, and they don't deserve that kind of sympathy.
So let me get this straight, Naheed Nenshi. You don't want to run a club where people need to say magic words or fit your purity tests, but you will say that anybody who has a different opinion than you is a white nationalist, doesn't need to eat, don't need sympathies, that you won't listen to their qualms. Keep in mind, this was when he was mayor of Calgary. This guy didn't want to listen to the citizens. What was even more alarming about that, I thought Justin Trudeau was bad. You want to see bad? Look at when he's talking with Hoffman here. And he openly admits that he didn't mind creating homelessness. How friggin' heartless does Nenshi have to be in order to state he took their homes but didn't leave them homeless? It's a cruel lie and foretells what he and Giancarlo and Jody Gondek want to do to even more Calgarians. Remove affordable owned housing and make us all state dependent. Again, you'll own nothing and be happy, right? Enjoy your 15-minute cities. Enjoy your universal basic income. Enjoy giving your marching orders. You'll do what we tell you to do with your body. You'll live how we tell you to live. You'll work where we tell you to work. It says here on the other text, we took their homes away, but they weren't homeless, says Nenshi. Let's take a listen to the clip.
Promised by you and council that they would be moved to another area, but that never came through. So many people experienced homelessness, and I did not expect somebody to identify as an NDP mayor.
Do you actually have a single example of someone who experienced homelessness, or are you fear-mongering here, Sarah?
Well, I'm telling you, I had to move in with his in-laws and live in their
so
basement, so they didn't have a home.
So you don't have any actual examples?
Well, promised by you and council that they would be moved to another...
So council had promised, this is in regards to a dispute that went on when Calgary was developing land over top of an existing trailer park. The trailer park was essentially given their marching orders and given a very low payout and told that the land was going to be used for rezoning of affordable housing. We've all heard that speech before. Now, the residents were not relocated as Naheed Nenshi said they were going to be. He just completely ignored them. But let's take a listen to that again.
Promised by you and council that they would be moved to another area, but that never came through. So many people experienced homelessness, and I did not expect somebody to identify as an NDP mayor.
Do you actually have a single example of someone who experienced homelessness, or are you fear-mongering here, Sarah?
Well, I'm telling you, I had to move in with his in-laws and live in their basement, so they didn't have a home.
So you don't have any actual examples?
Well, promised by...
Now, to add some context to what was said about Albertans, let's take a look at the actual quote, shall we, before we move forward with Naheed Nenshi. Here's the question that I have of the actual statement. Let's take a listen.
Sure.
You know, Jody, you've been sitting opposite these guys, and I have been to question period a grand total of once in my life. And I was watching you and your colleagues and watching these monkeys on the other side. Can we influence them at all from opposition,
from
or do
what
we have
I've
to look
witnessed,
beyond them?
Sure.
You know, Jody, you've been sitting...
These monkeys on the other side. Again, people could say, well, he was just talking about the behavior of people or anything else. That's a racist term, no matter how you put it. I don't know what else to say here. Now, with that being said, I want to give context to that argument because people say, "Well, Derek, you're just chopping up clips. You're feeding a narrative." Let's get the whole perspective here. Friend of the channel, Marty up north, the leadership races between Hoffman and Nenshi. Who won this engagement?
I've mentioned housing is one of the biggest crises here in Calgary, and there were 170 affordable housing homes in Midfield Park, and I need to know from you, Naheed, why you closed that park, why you evicted those folks. I've talked to many of them, and they are still paying their mortgages, and many of them experienced homelessness.
Sure, happy to answer that, off topic, but happy to answer it. I don't know if you ever went there. I don't know if you ever saw those so-called affordable homes. I'm sure you didn't, but the decision was a hard one. It was an incredibly difficult one, but we ensured that every single tenant who was there had the opportunity to move into a Calgary housing home with priority. And every single one of them who needed to be rehoused in a better place got that better place.
Well,
So, as somebody who lives in Calgary, I just want to reiterate for anybody who's watching this that doesn't live in Calgary, that doesn't understand Calgary housing. He's saying here that they offered to relocate people into Calgary housing. Calgary housing is essentially living on welfare. It's living in a dump in a high crime area, somewhere that you wouldn't really want to live if you were at worry of, being robbed or mugged or having any quality of life. These were people who had mortgages that were told, well, we think it's trashy, so get out. And, we'll relocate you to a dumpier area with less amenities because of where you chose to live. Let's go on.
Callan had an affordable home. He bought his trailer for $55,000. He was a newlywed. They were excited to start their family. It was a great place for them to live, and they had a great time there. And he ended up having to move in with his in-laws and leaving Calgary. He took that $55,000 mortgage with him. Thanks for the $10,000, but he's still paying off that mortgage today, 6 years later. He and his family did not think that that was a good move. They were all over the news. They were all begging to have their homes preserved. They were originally promised by you and council that they would be moved to another area, but that never came through. So many people experienced homelessness, and I did not expect somebody who identifies as an NDP mayor.
Do you actually have a single example of someone who experienced homelessness, or are you fear-mongering here, Sarah?
Well, I'm telling you, he had to move in with his in-laws and live in their
so you
basement,
don't
so
have
they didn't have a home.
So you don't have any actual examples?
Well,
because Sarah,
there are
this
many
is hard.
examples in the news.
Policy,
I've read the
as
stories
you know,
too, and I
you were the
talked to
Minister
them.
of
Did you
Health.
call them and did you talk to them? Because I know where they
sat
ended
in their
up.
living rooms, Sarah.
When
and
they had
as the
one.
Minister of Health, Sarah, you should know that sometimes the easy answers are not the easy answers. Sometimes you got to sit with people and find solutions for each individual
and tear
rather
down
than
their
relying
homes.
only on your ideology.
Literally still grieving about this process.
That's time.
Do you notice there how aggressively he walked towards her near the end there? This is a guy who can't stand anybody having a different opinion or a different view than him. And this is somebody that a lot of Albertans, many Albertans, are championing to be the next leader of this province. I've said it before when I talk about Nenshi, this should scare the shit out of each and every one of you, if you live in Alberta, that this monster wants to run the province. Now, I'm not saying that Sarah Hoffman's any better. I'm not saying that any of these people are better. I mean, but we're talking about people who lived in a trailer park given a $10,000 check and told to get out and go live on welfare housing or move in with their in-laws and continue to pay down their mortgages. Now, Nenshi, of course, says, well, they moved in with their in-laws. They're not homeless. Again, this is the man who views white people like this.
By the way, those people at those anti-mask protests, let's not kid ourselves. They're not people who need to eat. They are people who are marching in thinly veiled white nationalist, supremacist, anti-government protests, and they don't deserve that kind of sympathy.
What a hero. What a hero. What a stand-up leader. What a man of the people that is. If you want to talk about an inferiority or God complex, there it is. There it is on full display. This is Justin Trudeau 2.0. If Alberta thinks that it has it hard under Danielle Smith and want to be critical of Danielle Smith, again, you're allowed to vote however you want to vote. I'm not going I'm not going to sit here and tell somebody that I'm going to judge them for whatever reasons they vote. I have friends who vote NDP and they do it because they work in the education system and they like the benefits that come with the way that the SpendDP helps out people in education, or at least come across to help people out in education. Again, those are my political views, but I don't damn my friends for having their views or what works for their lifestyle. But what I have to ask the question of, and again, where it's not even a judgmental question, is when you compare this thing to Danielle Smith, even if you don't like some of her policies, white nationalists, monkeys, what other words did they use? Embarrassing cousins, sewer rats, entitled grabby resource exploiters, rednecks, people who don't deserve to eat. We'll offer them welfare if they don't like it. Did they really experience homelessness? That sounds to me like Justin Trudeau's old, they're just experiencing it differently excuse. And this is what's scary about the younger generation that supports this kind of outrage and says, well, he's Muslim. Well, he's gay. It's okay, though. He can have these views because we support the gays. We support Muslims. We support anybody who isn't white. This is where we are. I'll call it like I see it. If somebody wants to say that's racist, I'm sorry. I experience it every single day. In fact, when I go out, I've heard the word white thrown around in public more than any other word in the English language in the last year and a half. I don't use that word when I go out. I don't see color. I see people. But much like Pierre Poilievre, and I always go back to what he says because this is the distraction. This is the wedge issue. They insert these things on purpose because it gives them a leg up. You see Nenshi mention things like white nationalist. You'll hear him talk about Muslim this, Muslim that, because he's using those wedge issue diversity platforms in order to elevate his votes. He doesn't care about being a Muslim. He doesn't care about the gay community. He doesn't care about sewer rats or monkeys in Alberta. He cares about lining his pockets. He cares about being first in that buffet line. At least that's what he portrays whenever he talks at these conventions. The guy's loony. The guy is WACKO. He is full-on WACKO. And I'll tell you right now, Alberta, everybody in this province needs a massive wake-up call. If this gentleman, and I use that word very lightly, I use it because, and people say, you always use the word gentleman. Look, I'm a respectable individual. So I'll remain respectable even though I have my negative opinions about people. But out of respect for you, the viewer, I stay respectable. But if this guy gets into office, tough times are ahead. And it's going to be a very uphill battle for Danielle Smith. I'm not saying it isn't possible for her to win. But again, go back to our other videos I've covered on Naheed Nenshi, on Danielle Smith. You'll notice that when I bring up those voting maps, when I bring up the results from last election, unless Danielle Smith has made significant gains in Calgary and convinced Calgarians that she is the person for the job, she's got many ridings that went by a mere couple hundred votes, where she'll now have to compete with somebody against Gen Z, against boomers who think that, oh, he's Muslim, he's gay, he did a great job. We're in trouble. This is big trouble. Our next racist, uber racist leader, it's shameful, it's disgusting. I condemn everything this man said. And I'll just keep bringing you the facts as he rolls them out because let's be honest, this guy can't keep his mouth shut. He's going to get into bigger trouble as his campaign rolls along. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. If it's your first time here, I hope this video has earned your subscription. Don't forget as you're hitting that button to leave a thumbs up and a comment on their way out. It helps us rank in YouTube. It helps tell YouTube people need to see this video. There's been mass mass suppression on YouTube anytime we're talking about the government. And of course, that's what this channel is best at. So any help to get us out there in the old algorithms, definitely appreciated, folks. Join us live here on the channel Friday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central for Friday Night Fringe. Except for this Friday on the long weekend, of course, I will be out of town, and most other people will be as well. So we're skipping this Friday, but every Friday after that, ladies and gentlemen, join us live. We always go over everything that happened in the past week, everything coming up in the week ahead, and some back and forth with our community. It's always great to hear what you guys have to say inside of those streams, and I look forward to it each and every week. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and enjoyed this video. I'll catch you on the next one.